Hello people of YouTube, my name is Brad, this is my channel Animate Orange, and welcome to another ICONX review video. Today we're going to talk about the Notre Dame ICONX model. And what a fascinating looking model this is once it's all put together. The Notre Dame model is a little bit older as far as Metal Earth models is concerned. You can see it's all silver, no color involved in this. This is back before they started doing colored models like they are doing a lot of now. Don't think it's one of the oldest models, but it is a little bit older. The instructions do have some hints in it of newer models. I'm not sure if it's just that this came out, the version that I have has an updated instructions. Anyway, I've been sitting on this for a while. I actually won it as in a contest probably 3 years ago, and it's just been a while. A lot of other models have just kind of come first, and others that I wanted to get to, and I finally built this thing. I kind of point that out because one of the things I've had some time to think about since I've had this model a while and just recently built it. One of the things a lot of people talk about is the amount of these little, what I believe are called flying buttresses around the edge of it. And yes, there are quite a few. I believe, if my count is correct, there are a total of 38 different ones all the way around, and they're not all the same. And I was a little bit intimidated by the amount of people who have commented. There's a lot of these things you get really tired of. I was a little bit intimidated by that, but not too worried. And when it come time to actually build them, they're not that big a deal. It's just a matter of repeating the process over and over and over again. You take them in kind of sections. This front section actually has, I think it's 3 different kinds in it. Yes, 3 different kinds. You have a larger ones that are on the end of the circle, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4 of those. Most of the ones, there's 5 on each end that's next to the center part. They're all the same, and then there's this different kind that's kind of scattered in 2s between the group of 5 and the single ones all the way around. When I first went to put them on, it's a little bit intimidating because it's not the same ones, and there is a pattern to it. And one of the things that I initially tried to do is I tried to take the larger piece, which is part 26. There's only 4 of them, and I folded that. I was going to put all 4 part 26 on and then fill in the gaps. So I figured I'd start here and count my way around, and I was a little concerned that I would miscount. So I changed my strategy. There's 5 of the same right here. It's 5 part 28s, and then you do 2 27s, 1 26, 2 27s, 1 26, 2 27s, until you've done all 4. So the 26 and 27s kind of repeat back and forth. So it's 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 back and forth between the 227s and the 126, and then you do 5 more of the 28s until you get back to this kind of central piece. And then on this side over here, on this end, on both sides, they are all the same. They're all part 29s. They're slightly more complicated because there's 2 pieces up top you have to fold in, but for the most part all of these are just 2 side pieces you fold in. One side has 2 tabs, one side has 1. I learned that if you take the side that has the 1 tab and fold it in slightly more than 90 degrees, so that tab angles in the tiniest bit, they line up with their slots a lot easier, because a lot of times you get the 2 tabs in and it kind of rocks trying to get it in, and that little bit of an angle really helps them fall in. All of those just have the 2 sides, except for this end. It has 2 flaps above the 2 sides you have to fold in separately, but no big deal. Just repetitive. And once I figured out, hey, just start here and follow the pattern all the way around, and I start to get the hang of it, it kind of sped up, and I worked right on through it. What surprised me, however, was that this end piece right here was as complicated as it was. You throw the main body together kind of quickly because it's big pieces coming together. This is actually, this end piece of the build in a separate section has a lot of little pieces in it. Not tiny detail, but just a lot to it. And it took me, if you watch the part 1 and part 2 videos, part 1 is pretty much doing this whole front section minus, I think, this spider here. And the second part is doing this back section, and while it looks smaller, there's just a lot more to it. A lot of little parts in there, a lot of little columns to add on, and there's more folding and shaping to those. And these top 2 square pieces have numerous parts. I think there's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 parts in each one of these little tower here. There's 8 pieces into that. Speaking of that, one thing that I thought was kind of interesting is these tower pieces, the sides are all separate pieces that then go into a top piece which has 2 pieces shaped on that. Then there's a bottom piece underneath that allows it to attach inside this framework. What I normally would have expected from a Metal Earth model is that all the sides were one piece that folds up around the rest of the pieces, but these are all separate that you have to attach together. That means more tabs and more folding and it being a little bit more fiddly, but I kind of prefer it that way. I liked that method better. My first thought was, why did they do this way and not just have it one piece? But as I was building it, I'm like, you know, I like this way just fine. And the way it comes together, being separate pieces, you don't have to worry about that final tab being difficult to get into place because you're swinging a part around at an angle, and the tabs, if they stick out too far, trying to swing a slot over it doesn't always work out. Whereas if you're allowed to come more straight on, and yes, I know that looks bad, this is this tab and this is a slot, don't get any funny ideas. If you're bringing it straight on, it lines up better and it's just easier to do. But yeah, I was really surprised at how much time I spent on this back piece versus the front. The front, while it took a while, was repetitive and not that big a deal. It just really surprised me. Once I got all the rest of it done, I thought the back part would come together and I was almost finished. Now I was only halfway done. It took about as much time to do this as it did the rest of this. There was some issues when it comes to the way the walls come together because there's sections and then all of them have to line up for the center part. I had trouble getting all the tabs lined up because there's like 2 tabs down here, a tab in the middle, and a tab up top, or a slot that goes under the tab. And I had trouble getting them all lined up at the same time on one side at least. I got the 2 bottom ones lined up and secured, and then fiddled with the top ones because I had to do it in sections to get it to actually work. There are a number of little spire pieces. You can see there's 2 here, 2 here, there's 1 up top, and there's kind of small ones on this end piece here and on this side. These 2 are not that big a deal because they're open on one side and you have room to get in there and shape things. And one thing about this section right here and the middle one on the other side is that in the instructions it almost makes it look like the sides fold up into kind of a square box shape when they flare out slightly, and I had to adjust it, which is not a big deal at all. But for these 4 and this one in the middle here, it's a little challenging trying to get that peak top part folded just right, because how are you going to put your tool down in there and shape it when it comes to a complete point, enclosed point? These were more challenging than that one in some aspects because you can't really go underneath to shape it because you've got the rest of the part in the way. It's all one piece, so you really kind of have to shape it from the top. And what I ended up doing is getting like I did the trick that I often do with the small thin box shaped parts, is you fold that middle bend. Kind of did it backwards actually. I folded the middle bend 90 degrees and the outer ends a little bit, and then kind of along the top of it kind of pinched it, carefully shaping it into its final shape. Tried the same method with this because it's taller and longer. The top is not quite perfect. It's a little bit wonky, but I've done the best I can. Just getting a tool up into that point apart, there's only so much you can do and only so well that you can bend it. I'm not saying it's impossible to get it right. If things fall in line the right way, yes. They didn't quite for me. It's not terrible, but it's not perfect, and I can see the problem with it. There's a couple of odd and end places in the instructions that might cause a little bit of confusion. One of which I've already remarked on, which is this piece right here. And that would be part 46. When you're in steps 15 and 16, you're building one side on one step, the other side the other step. It kind of makes it look like this part 46, again, the sides fold up at right angles, but they're actually flared out slightly. Not a big deal, and even if you make the mistake that I did, it's no big deal to kind of spread them back out and put it into place. There's also a matter of parts 11 and 12, which are kind of on the sides of these pieces that stick out over here. There's a side piece, it's kind of hard to see here, that 11 and 12, one end is flat and the other end has an angle because of the way it's sitting in there on the angled roof. And the way the instructions are showing it confused me ever so slightly, is they show 11 and 12 with the angled side up. But then right beside that, they show the part connecting, and it's not clear from the side view, perfectly clear which way is the angled way. And if you just assume that they've taken that part and moved it straight over and fold the sides, you're going to get it upside down. The sort of angled part goes down and the flat part goes up top. The instructions aren't perfectly clear about that, and the way they go from showing the part to showing it connected, it actually flips and then connects, and you can get misled. Not a big deal. I kind of checked ahead. That's a little tip for you if you go to build this model. Of course, if you watch the build videos, they are long, but they do include a lot of tips and a lot of things and struggles that I went through when building this model. And there is one thing I suggest paying attention to when it comes to putting in like these doorways. You've got several along the back here and one on each side here. There's a few instances where mind which way you're folding the tabs, because the tabs can either cover slots for other parts, or right next door, I think there's an instance on the back here somewhere where the tab can actually be in the way of another part sitting flat and kind of mess things up a little bit. Most of the time I caught that. There's one time I didn't quite catch it and the part's sitting on top, and I honestly can't remember which part it is. It doesn't sit perfectly flat. It doesn't stand out. It's not that big a deal, but pay attention to which way the flaps are folding, the tabs are folding, if you fold them, that you're not either blocking another slot or blocking another part from sitting flat farther down the instructions. This model took a total of 4 hours to put together, which compared to a lot of the models I've been building lately, it's really not that long. It didn't seem like a long model. It did take me a little time, but it didn't drag out and seem to take forever, with the one exception of I really felt like I was close to being done when I got to this back part, and it took longer than expected, but still 4 hours, no big deal. And take your time and be careful, and I'm really amazed at how well this model turned out with all of these little pieces, the little flying buttresses on the side. There's so many ways that could have went terribly wrong, and there is probably a little bit of adjustment that I could do to make those lines, those support pieces line up better. But overall it looks really, really, really nice, and it comes together really, really well, and there wasn't a whole lot of straightening up to do once I was completed and finished with this model. Again, there's a part 1 and a part 2 build video for this if you're wanting to go through the steps of everything that I went through to build it and every little tip and trick. Otherwise, if you got some experience under your belt building these models, this should be fairly intuitive and really pretty easy for you to just follow directions and figure out. There's not a lot of tricky parts. Do not remember any frustrating parts at all, and it is a nice size model, being ICONX. And one thing about it being ICONX, sometimes the ICONX models just seem to cram in a lot of little detailed pieces. This I can't really say is one of them. There is a good amount of detail to it, but it's not tiny, annoying, crazy pieces that make you go, how in the world I'm going to do this? I'm going to want to try because it's going to look great in the end. But they managed to pull off this wonderful look without a lot of really tiny, frustrating parts. It looks fantastic. I love it. I'm going to leave it at that. As always, thank you for watching. Thank you to my Patreon supporters for continuing to support this channel. And thank you for tuning in, watching, and commenting. As always, keep on keeping on.